this episode, we examine what happens when Karens try climbing Everest with nothing but ego. With their endless complaints, threats, and demands, they entered the world's most unforgiving environment, confident their country club tactics would somehow work on Everest. The experienced guides who tried to save them are still haunted by what happened next. It was May 12th, 2016. Base camp at 17,598 feet sprawled across the rocky moraine like a temporary city of colorful tents and prayer flags, while climbers made final preparations in the thin air before dawn. The weather window for summit attempts was closing rapidly, creating an atmosphere of urgency and tension throughout the camp. Magnolia Pristine Ashworth was 42, a pharmaceutical heiress from Connecticut who was accustomed to having staff anticipate her every need. Money had always solved her problems, and she expected the same level of service she received at luxury resorts. She had completed 3 guided climbs in Colorado's 14ers and spent a week at a mountaineering school in France, though she had never been above 14,500 feet or used technical climbing equipment extensively. The expedition cost her $85,000, which she considered a guarantee of premium treatment and priority access throughout the climb. The Khumbu Icefall contains some of the world's most dangerous terrain, with massive ice blocks constantly shifting and creating hidden crevasses up to 100 feet deep. Snow bridges over these crevasses can appear solid, but collapse without warning under a climber's weight. The icefall moves up to 3 feet per day, making safe routes obsolete within hours and requiring constant vigilance from climbers navigating the unstable terrain. Fixed ropes and ladder systems provide the only safe passage through this deadly maze of ice and snow. Magnolia demanded her tent be moved to a more level spot, claiming the current location was unacceptable for someone of her status. She insisted on being served meals first, arguing that her dietary restrictions required priority attention over other climbers. When other team members made noise during gear preparation, she complained loudly and demanded they be quieter during her rest periods. She refused to carry her share of group equipment, stating she had paid extra to avoid such responsibilities. When told she couldn't skip acclimatization rotations, she asked to speak with expedition management immediately. She criticized the quality of base camp facilities and demanded upgrades to her accommodation, threatening to leave negative reviews if her concerns weren't addressed. The expedition leader briefed all climbers about rope discipline and wading protocols, but Magnolia repeatedly interrupted to ask about special arrangements for premium clients. At 6:45 a.m., approximately 1,000 feet above base camp in the Khumbu Icefall, Magnolia became impatient with the pace of climbers ahead. She unclipped from the fixed rope system and attempted to pass the line of climbers on the unstable snow to the left. The area was marked with warning flags indicating crevasse danger. As she stepped onto what appeared to be solid snow, the thin snow bridge collapsed under her weight. The sound of cracking snow echoed through the icefall as the bridge gave way beneath her feet. Other climbers shouted warnings, but the collapse happened too quickly for anyone to react. Her expensive gear scattered as she fell, with her custom-made ice axe clattering against the crevasse walls during her descent. The climber who witnessed the fall later described hearing her voice echoing from deep within the ice before it gradually faded to silence. The narrow crevasse walls pressed against her body as she became wedged in the confined space. Her breathing became increasingly labored as the tight confines restricted her chest movement. The weight of her heavy pack, loaded with luxury items she had insisted on bringing, pushed her deeper into the narrowing gap. Ice crystals formed on her breath in the frigid air as she struggled against the unforgiving walls that held her trapped. She fell approximately 80 feet into a crevasse that was 4 feet wide at the top and narrowed to 18 inches at the bottom. Her headlamp illuminated blue ice walls as she became wedged between them. The climber directly behind her witnessed the fall and immediately radioed for help. Magnolia was conscious initially, but trapped in a position that restricted breathing. The narrow confines and her heavy pack made extraction impossible with available equipment. The witness radioed base camp at 6:47 a.m. using expedition communication equipment. A rescue team was assembled, but required specialized crevasse rescue gear to be transported up from base camp. The technical rescue took 4 hours to organize due to the location's difficulty and the need for additional anchoring equipment. By the time rescuers reached the crevasse, There was no response to their calls. Magnolia's body was recovered 6 hours after the fall. The medical examiner's report listed cause of death as asphyxiation due to positional compression in a confined space. Contributing factors included failure to follow established safety protocols and attempting to bypass designated climbing routes. The incident was briefly mentioned in climbing publications as a reminder about rope discipline. It was April 28, 2015. Camp 2 perched precariously on a rocky ledge at 21,300 feet, where every drop of water was precious and fuel supplies meant the difference between survival and death. The extreme altitude and harsh conditions made resource management critical for survival in this unforgiving environment. Evangelene Worthington Blake was 38, a corporate compliance officer from Massachusetts whose career centered on identifying contamination risks and enforcing cleanliness standards. She approached every situation with checklists and protocols, believing that proper procedures could eliminate any risk. Her outdoor experience consisted of day hikes in New England and 2 weekend camping trips, but she had never used mountaineering equipment or slept above 3,000 feet. She viewed Everest as the ultimate test of her systematic approach to risk management and had researched every possible contamination scenario. High-altitude camping requires careful resource management, as every supply must be carried up from lower elevations at great physical cost. Fuel for melting snow becomes critically important as natural water sources disappear above base camp elevations. The extreme cold and dry air create additional challenges for maintaining proper nutrition and hydration levels. Shared facilities and communal cooking arrangements become essential for conserving precious resources in the harsh mountain environment. Evangelene questioned the sanitation procedures for shared cooking equipment and demanded written protocols for every cleaning procedure. She requested that communal areas be cleaned with disinfectant before each use and insisted on inspecting other climbers' personal hygiene practices. She hoarded extra oxygen canisters and fuel supplies, arguing she needed backup supplies for safety reasons that others didn't understand. She refused to share cooking duties, stating that others didn't meet her cleanliness standards, and demanded that meal preparation be done separately from the group kitchen area. When other climbers used the communal water station, she complained they weren't washing their hands frequently enough and posed contamination risk to the entire expedition. On the morning of April 30th, Evangelene's personal fuel supply ran critically low after 2 days of solo snow melting. She had been consuming approximately 2 liters of water daily, well below the recommended amount. At 11:30 a.m., she approached the communal water station but refused to use it after observing other climbers handling the equipment. Her attempts to maintain sterile conditions became increasingly desperate as her water supply dwindled. She spent precious time wiping down equipment with sanitizing wipes that froze solid in the extreme cold, making them useless. Other climbers watched as she repeatedly cleaned the same surfaces, obsessing over imaginary contamination, while her dehydration worsened. Her movements became more erratic as she searched through her supplies for alternative purification methods. The irony of her situation became apparent to observers as she chose potential death over using shared equipment. Her hoarded fuel supplies sat unused in her tent while she rationed her remaining water to dangerous levels. Fellow climbers offered to help melt snow using their equipment, but she refused each offer, claiming their methods didn't meet her safety standards. Her voice became increasingly hoarse as dehydration affected her ability to speak clearly. She attempted to melt snow using her remaining fuel, but the canister was nearly empty. The melting process yielded less than 500 milliliters of water. By 2 p.m., she was showing signs of severe dehydration, dizziness, confusion, and dark urine. She became increasingly irrational, accusing other climbers of contaminating her supplies. At 4:15 p.m., she collapsed outside her tent. Other climbers found her unconscious with a weak pulse and extremely dry mucous membranes. Emergency rehydration was immediately initiated by a climber with medical training using expedition medical supplies. Radio contact was established with Base Camp Medical at 4:20 p.m. Due to her condition and the camp's elevation, helicopter evacuation was impossible. The medical team attempted aggressive rehydration, but her kidneys had already begun shutting down from prolonged dehydration. Evangelene died at 11:45 p.m. on April 30th. The expedition doctor's report listed cause of death as acute renal failure, secondary to severe dehydration. Contributing factors included refusal to utilize available water sources and inadequate fluid intake over 72 hours. Her unused hoarded supplies were redistributed to other climbers. It was March 15, 2017. The route between Camp 1 and Camp 2 stretched across exposed ice slopes at 20,500 feet, where sudden weather changes could trap climbers in whiteout conditions within minutes. Storm clouds were building on the horizon, threatening to engulf the mountain in dangerous conditions. Janet Middlesworth was 45, a retail district manager from Arizona who had spent 20 years supervising employees and enforcing company standards. She believed that proper management and clear expectations could solve any problem, including mountain climbing. Janet had zero mountaineering experience beyond weekend hikes in desert terrain, had never used crampons or an ice axe, and had never been in snow deeper than a few inches. She chose Everest specifically because it was the most challenging goal she could imagine, viewing it as the ultimate management test. The exposed ridges and ice slopes between camps offer no protection from sudden weather changes that can engulf the mountain without warning. Navigation becomes extremely challenging when visibility drops, as familiar landmarks disappear and GPS devices can malfunction in extreme conditions. The narrow routes and steep terrain leave little room for error when weather conditions deteriorate rapidly. Climbers must rely entirely on their guides' experience and local knowledge to navigate safely through these treacherous sections. Janet demanded to see the credentials and certifications of all guides, insisting they provide detailed itineraries with exact timing for each section of the climb. She complained that the guides weren't wearing proper identification badges or uniforms, and requested daily performance evaluations be conducted on all expedition staff. She criticized the guides for not maintaining professional appearance standards and demanded that all safety briefings be provided in writing with her approval. She insisted on reviewing and approving all route decisions before implementation, treating the experienced guides like subordinate employees. When the 23-year-old guide, who had summited Everest 6 times, began leading the descent using GPS and terrain familiarity, Janet fell approximately 20 feet behind the group, refusing to maintain the required close formation. At 3:15 p.m., visibility dropped to 0 as the storm intensified. Janet complained loudly about the guide's competence and demanded to speak with a more senior guide. At 3:45 p.m., she became completely separated from the group when she chose to follow what she believed was a better route. The guide noticed her absence and immediately began search protocols, but the whiteout conditions made visual contact impossible. The storm's intensity made communication impossible as wind howled across the exposed slopes. Janet's voice, calling for help, was immediately swallowed by the roaring wind, and her attempts to use her radio produced only static. The blowing snow stung her exposed face and began accumulating on her goggles, further reducing her already limited visibility. Her expensive GPS device showed conflicting readings due to the extreme weather conditions, leaving her completely disoriented. As hypothermia began setting in, Janet's decision-making became increasingly impaired. She continued to move in what she believed was the correct direction, but her path led further away from safety with each step. The cold penetrated her clothing as she struggled against the wind, and her movements became sluggish and uncoordinated. Ice began forming on her breathing apparatus, making each breath more difficult as the storm raged around her isolated position. Janet continued descending in the wrong direction, moving further from the established route. By 4:30 p.m., she was completely lost and began showing signs of panic and hypothermia. The guide radioed base camp at 4 p.m., reporting a missing climber. Search teams were organized, but the storm conditions prevented immediate deployment. GPS tracking showed Janet's last known position, moving away from the safe descent route. Radio attempts to contact her personal device received no response. The storm continued for 8 hours, preventing any rescue attempts until the following morning. Janet's body was found 400 yards from the established route, approximately 1,000 feet below where she was last seen. The medical examiner determined cause of death was severe hypothermia, with contributing factors of exposure and exhaustion. Evidence showed she had attempted to build a snow shelter, but lacked proper technique. The investigation concluded that failure to follow guide instructions and separation from the group during whiteout conditions led to her death. It was June 8, 2014. Camp 3 clung to the steep Lhotse face at 24,500 feet, where the air contained only one-third the oxygen of sea level, and every movement required deliberate effort. The thin atmosphere and extreme cold created a hostile environment where even basic tasks became life-threatening challenges. Dolores Fitzpatrick was 51, a neighborhood association board member from suburban Illinois who had dedicated her life to creating and enforcing community regulations. She thrived on establishing order and ensuring compliance with proper procedures. Dolores had completed charity walks and several guided nature hikes in local parks, but had never camped overnight or used any technical equipment. She viewed Everest as an opportunity to demonstrate that proper planning and rule following could overcome any obstacle, treating the expedition like a community project that needed her organizational skills. The extreme altitude above 24,000 feet creates a hostile environment where the human body begins breaking down faster than it can recover. Sleep becomes nearly impossible as the brain struggles to function with reduced oxygen levels. While simple tasks require enormous effort, medical emergencies become exponentially more dangerous as evacuation options become limited by weather and terrain. The body's natural warning systems often fail at these elevations, making it difficult to recognize serious health problems before they become life-threatening. Dolores created a written schedule for base camp activities and posted it in the common area without authorization. She established quiet hours and noise restrictions for the entire expedition and demanded that all climbers sign in and out when leaving their tents. She insisted on conducting daily inspections of other climbers' gear organization and complained that meal times were too flexible and needed fixed scheduling. She requested that expedition leaders provide written reports on daily progress and criticized other climbers for not following her posted guidelines. When they ignored her unauthorized rules, she threatened to file complaints with expedition management about their non-compliance with her established procedures. On June 10th, Dolores began showing severe altitude sickness symptoms and headache, vomiting, and confusion. The expedition doctor recommended immediate descent and prescribed medication, but she refused both treatments. She insisted her herbal remedies were sufficient and accused the medical team of trying to force unnecessary drugs on her. Her condition deteriorated rapidly as she continued to reject medical intervention. Fellow climbers observed her stumbling around the camp, unable to walk in straight lines, yet she insisted on maintaining her daily inspection routine. She attempted to organize her belongings repeatedly, forgetting what she had just done and starting over again. Her speech became increasingly slurred as she tried to give orders to other climbers who watched in growing alarm. The altitude sickness affected her judgment so severely that she began accusing the medical team of conspiracy and incompetence. She threw her prescribed medication into the snow, claiming it was poison designed to make her dependent on the medical establishment. Other climbers tried to reason with her, but she responded with increasingly paranoid accusations about plots to undermine her authority. Her coordination failed as she attempted to write additional rules and regulations, her handwriting becoming illegible scrawls. By evening, her symptoms had progressed to include difficulty walking and slurred speech, indicating possible cerebral edema. Other climbers observed her applying essential oils to her temples and consuming herbal tinctures instead of taking prescribed medication. At 11:30 p.m., she was found unconscious in her tent by her tent mate. Her breathing was labored and irregular, and she was unresponsive to verbal stimuli. The tent mate immediately alerted the expedition doctor at 11:35 p.m. Medical assessment revealed signs of high-altitude cerebral edema, altered consciousness, and ataxia. Emergency descent was initiated, but her condition deteriorated rapidly during transport. Radio contact with base medical was established, but evacuation from that altitude in darkness was impossible. Dolores died at 3:20 a.m. on June 11th during the emergency descent. The medical examiner's report listed cause of death as high-altitude cerebral edema, with contributing factors of refusal of standard medical treatment and delayed descent. Evidence recovered from her tent included unused prescription altitude medication and various herbal supplements. The investigation noted that early medical intervention could have prevented the fatal outcome. It was May 19th, 2018. The Hillary Step area at 28,700 feet marked the final technical challenge before Everest's summit, where climbers moved through the death zone with only minutes of survival time without supplemental oxygen. The extreme altitude and harsh conditions made every breath a struggle, and every movement a calculated risk. Aramenta Fairweatherstone was 47, a frequent complainant from an affluent suburb who maintained detailed records of every unsatisfactory service experience and regularly demanded refunds or compensation. She operated under the belief that paying premium prices guaranteed perfect outcomes and that any disappointment warranted immediate correction. Aramenta had never climbed anything higher than a local hiking trail and had no outdoor experience beyond day trips to scenic overlooks. She selected Everest specifically because it was the most expensive and prestigious climbing goal available, viewing it as the ultimate luxury adventure experience. The final approach to Everest's summit pushes climbers through the most extreme conditions on Earth, where every step requires maximum effort and minimum oxygen. The technical climbing sections demand precise movements while wearing bulky protective gear in sub-zero temperatures. Weather windows for summit attempts are measured in hours, creating intense pressure to maintain pace regardless of physical condition. The psychological stress of achieving a lifelong goal can cloud judgment at the exact moment when clear thinking becomes most critical for survival. Aramenta demanded detailed explanations for every aspect of the climbing schedule and route selection, insisting on reviewing and approving all promotional materials used by the expedition company. She complained that the base camp facilities didn't match the website descriptions and requested written guarantees about summit success rates and weather conditions. She demanded that guides provide constant updates on her progress compared to other climbers. She insisted on receiving daily reports about expedition performance metrics and threatened to leave negative reviews and demand refunds if any aspect of the experience was unsatisfactory. Her complaints focused on false advertising and unmet expectations rather than safety concerns or climbing preparation. At 7:30 a.m. on May 20th, approximately 150 feet below the summit, Aramenta began experiencing chest tightness and shortness of breath beyond normal altitude effects. She attributed the symptoms to poor expedition planning and continued climbing while complaining about false advertising. At 8:15 a.m., she reached the summit but immediately began criticizing its appearance and demanding explanations for the discrepancy with promotional photos. The summit's appearance failed to meet her expectations based on professional photographs she had seen in marketing materials. She complained loudly about the lack of clear views due to clouds and demanded to know why the expedition company hadn't guaranteed better weather conditions. Her voice became increasingly strained as she berated her guide about the summit's disappointing size and unremarkable features. Other climbers watched in disbelief as she threatened to demand a partial refund for the substandard summit experience. Her agitation and physical exertion in the extreme altitude began taking a severe toll on her cardiovascular system. The combination of her hidden heart condition, extreme altitude, and emotional stress created a perfect storm for cardiac failure. She continued her complaints even as her breathing became labored, insisting that the expedition company had misrepresented the summit experience. Her face began showing signs of oxygen deprivation, but she attributed her discomfort to anger rather than medical emergency. The extreme exertion combined with altitude stress triggered severe chest pain. She collapsed at 8:25 a.m. while posing for summit photos. Other climbers observed her clutching her chest and gasping for air. Her lips turned blue, and she lost consciousness within 2 minutes. A climber with medical training immediately began CPR, while others administered supplemental oxygen. Radio contact with Base Camp Medical was established at 8:30 a.m. Due to the extreme altitude and weather conditions, helicopter evacuation was impossible. The medical team attempted resuscitation for 45 minutes, but her heart rhythm could not be restored. Aramenta was pronounced dead at 9:10 a.m. on the summit of Mount Everest. The medical examiner's report listed cause of death as massive myocardial infarction, triggered by extreme altitude and physical stress. Contributing factors included concealment of pre-existing cardiac condition and failure to disclose relevant medical history. Investigation revealed prescription heart medication in her personal belongings that had not been reported during medical screening. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here